Alright, so pretty much doing an inheritance video, I guess. So let's go. Um, I'm making this video while live streaming. So I I guess I'll just continue like I do normally. So I'm gonna be answering questions in chat as well. So feel free to ask questions, chat. Um, so let's get into this. So inheritance. So what is inheritance? So inheritance is the idea that you create something, an object, sort of a holder, where you basically, instead of rewriting all the functions repeatedly in every single module or object, you simply you inherit or get slash take slash copy without copying the functions or methods or properties from a object, if that makes sense. So let me just use a table as an example. So if I had a table here, and I'm just going to put, let's say, test function table test. All right. So if I were to make another table, I would have to either do this, right, to make a new function inside of that table, or I would have to inherit that function from this table. Now, this is essentially what inheritance is mainly used for, actually, and it's pretty much its only primary definition is it's to shorten code in object-oriented programming. If you don't know what that is, I have videos specifically talking about object-oriented programming. I think I have 4 videos talking about object-oriented programming. So go watch them if you don't know what I'm talking about. But this will essentially allow this, it will turn this basically into this. So now this we can call table.test. And we can also call table test, right? So this is what inheritance will allow us to do. Now, how do we do that? It's actually rather simple once you understand the concept of inheritance. So I'm just going to go, you need to use a meta table, which is object-oriented it's a simulation of object-oriented programming in Lua, because there's no real quote-unquote object-oriented programming in Lua. And because of that, you can't, use C++ object-oriented programming, where um, you could have, you can't really have that same level of multi-level inheritance that you can in C++. But you can inherit from another object, but it starts to get a little skeptical if you slash it's I don't know, it starts to get very cloudy, I guess is the term, once you start inheriting from an inherit of an inherit, because at that point you shouldn't be doing that because that's ineffective, and also it's not really clean or really that possible to do in Lua. So there are limitations to this inheriting in Lua, Roblox Lua specifically. Regular Lua is different because you can use C libraries. Roblox C support when? Question mark. But chat, calm down. Um, so I'm gonna stop talking and get into the point. So let's create a module. So we'll call this module, and then every module has to return one value. So I'm going to create a simple initializing meta method, or method, sorry. Function, I guess, is the proper term for those who are keeping track. So we'll call this new, and we'll return. We'll go ahead and return set meta table to this module, right? So we'll do an A equals 2, B equals 3. I forgot C like a retard. and d equals 5. Right. So now I'm also going to make another function called test. And notice I'm using a semicolon instead of a colon. I mean a period, just because we're using, or I'm using a colon instead of a period because we're indexing our meta method when we're making this function. So I'm going to do print self. So normally, when you're not doing inheritance, you just do index itself, right? Now, what this would allow us to do is normally, it would allow us to use the meta table normally. So let me just local equals bar script dot parent module. So if we create an object, mod.new, right? So now we can do object, what was the function called? It was like test, right? Test. Now, what if we run the game, this will essentially print self, right? Now, if I were to create another object, I'm going to call this ob2. If I were to create another object, if I wanted to inherit that, or if I wanted to call that, I would have to do require script.parent dot ob2, right? And then I have to do the same exact thing, mod the new, right? Then I'd have to call that function again, like that, right? So this is backing up that idea of, hey, we have to create two tables in order to do two functions. However, if you use inheritance, that is not the case, like I mentioned multiple times. So how do you inherit using meta tables? So normally, like I mentioned, we use this meta method. We use the index meta method. However, if you want to inherit from something, you index the table you want to inherit from. So in this case, I'm going to do module index equals function, right? We don't care about the first parameter because that doesn't matter. We just need the index. So we'll return this module's index, right? Or we will also go and require the path to our module. So script.parent.ob2, right? Is this ob2? Okay. So this will require this module, and then I can do index. So now I will simply be able to require ob2 without actually making a new object. So now we can just delete this and delete this. So now if we notice, oh, nothing changed. Yeah, that's because we haven't actually done anything with this object yet. So what I'm going to do is go to ob2, right, and add a few functions. What the heck did I just do? So instead of having this, I'm going to go ahead and add a function, and this is going to be called new function. And I'm going to print self a new function, right? Now, whenever if you're not using meta methods to do this, normally when you do self, it would print what's in this table. So I'm going to do a few values in this table. Those are big numbers. These are definitely over 1 byte. But we're just going to keep adding, values to our table. And now we're going to run the game without actually calling the function. So now if I wanted to call this function that we just made, right? Because like I said, we are inheriting from that module. And now if we print it, we notice instead of printing this, we're actually printing our object that we're inheriting these functions from. So now what you could do is if I wanted to create another one, instead of copying these functions, right? Instead of ob1, ob3. So instead of, creating the functions inside of each of these modules, I can just simply inherit from this superclass of sorts. So we can do object 1, and then we can do local mod 2 equals require script of parent ob3. Now we can do the same exact thing. So Damn, this is getting messy. I don't like this at all. Now we can actually new function. So now once we do this, we can actually notice that, hey, we're actually calling the function from this module, right? So now, theoretically, we don't even have to have this function anymore. We can just simply have a meta table, the initialization of the meta table, and then we have all the functions in another module because in theory we are inheriting those functions from this module script. Now what we can also do is return set meta table of that module, and we can run the game. And we notice, oh, this attempted to call no value. This is because we are actually not indexing anything, right? Because with a meta table, you actually have to index something. Where is that module, right? What was the question? One module with... So basically, you could do something like create one module with functions, one module with properties, and then inherit. Yes, you could do that. Yeah. So if you want to do that, I wouldn't suggest doing that, but in theory, yes. So I'm going to go do this, right? Index equals our module. Now let's see what happens. Now we notice we are actually printing from our class even though we are indexing a function from a meta table, right? So now if we actually were to add to our meta table, right? I'm going to add and just remove these. If I were to print self.1, we notice we print 1 because we are now also inheriting the properties from this meta table on top of the functions from this meta table. So now we are inheriting from another object, similar to the idea that we're inheriting the functions, except we're inheriting the properties from this self. Now you may be asking, well, why doesn't it print these properties when you actually run the function? It's because we are actually firing the function from a different object. And when you use the semicolon, you're automatically passing the self parameter, which is given to this object that we're indexing from. Does that make sense, chat? Everybody understand? Any questions on that? Because that was a wordful to take in. Okay, everybody understands, good. Okay, that's basically inheritance. Now, what else could you do with this? Well, let's say you wanted to have a character class, like my game currently does. I have enemies, and I have a character. What I did was I inherit everything that my enemy inherits. I inherit from my character class. So in other words, I don't have to rewrite modules for each thing because everything is automatically inherited. That way I can initialize things and make everything modulated to the point where I can add a new module script. And congrats, we have a new object or a new character in our game. We have a new player class. We have a new whatever in our game. And this allows me to do things that are very effective in keeping code organized and modulated. So, chat, do you have any questions on like what limitations there are, anything? And I'm open because I'm about to end the video. Okay. Oh, I could do that too. So now that we know how to inherit, we can actually do a wrapper for something. So a wrapper is essentially, think of it like we're wrapping around a Roblox built-in method. So I'm going to go ahead and do a custom math module while also connecting to Roblox math module. So what I'll do is make a math. I can't do that. So I'll do local math equals table. And then I'll return set meta table. Math. And then what I'll do I can't do that like that. I'll just return math. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a wrapper to the Roblox built-in math module. So what I'll do is normal is return set metatable. And then normally how we use the index, right? We're setting into a function. Okay, so someone in chat said explain what a wrapper is. So a wrapper is something that wraps around something, like I mentioned. So think of it like if you were to wrap something around a piece of paper, right? That wrapper encapsulates or that is around that piece of paper. And essentially it has full control of that piece of paper, right? Because it's encapsulated and consumed that piece of paper. It's the same concept with a wrapper. So we are taking and inheriting every function or all the functionality, everything from a specific module. It's basically inheritance to the point where you can add on to something that Roblox already made because they don't give us C library support because they don't know what they're doing. I'm sorry, Roblox, but you need to add C support. Anyway, so we're going to return, like normal, we're going to return math.index, or we can return math index. Now what this will do is it inherit from the math library. So now I can do math equals require script.parent.math. Ignore the error because I don't really care about these Roblox errors anymore. But here now we can do math dot clamp. Or Sealy. LGF 55.15. I'll print this. Right? We notice attempt to call no value. That is because it can't find an index for this module, right? So what we need to do is do this. So we'll do if bruh. Come on now, Roblox. Don't do that to me. That should work, right? Of course it doesn't want to work. The one time I try to show off how to do this, it doesn't work. What am I doing wrong? This is right. Oh. Yeah. That's why. That should work now. Yeah. It was because I forgot to return something. Okay, so now we have noticed that we have our math Sealy function. Now what if we wanted to add custom functionality? Well, I'm going to add a function called OK math. Okay, and we're going to print 2 plus 2. Now you may be thinking, wait, that's not a valid member of math. Well, it is when you use a wrapper. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this function like this. Oh my gosh, it printed 4. That's absolutely crazy. I know. And that's pretty much how wrappers work in Roblox. You're wrapping around the instance or a library that Roblox made. You could also do this with enums to make custom enum systems. You can do now if you do math.absolute though, it will not work because it's indexing enum. You could also, and you can do enum. So I can print enum.user. No, I could print math.user input state. And it'll print the enum. Even though I'm indexing math. If you really want to get that into it. But this is inheritance, actually. This is pretty much all you need to know about inheriting Roblox. Just to recap, I went over how to inherit, what is inheritance, is it useful, and what you can do with it in Roblox. Subscribe.